People of Earth, this is Prostatic Vaughan Galax of the Galactic Hyperspace Council. As you will probably know, transfer the development of the outlying regions of the galaxy involve the building of a hyperspace express route through your star system. And your planet is one of those scheduled for demolition. There's no point in having you all surprised about it. The plan's an sure is to be on display to local planning officers and going for 50 years. If you can't be not particularly interested in the affairs, but you never know how to. That pathetic bloody planet. But this is good. That is New York.
Welcome, fellow hitchhikers. You made it. That's fantastic. Honestly, I didn't think any of us would, but I'm glad you're here. For more reasons than one. Welcome. As you saw, well, Earth is gone. But now the question is, where do we go? An excellent question. Honestly, I have no idea. But I have 4 individuals that I think can help us. Honestly, at this point, what's the worst that can happen? But these interns, they are ready to present to you their newfound knowledge to save us and to find the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Gwyn Napier hails from a planet far away, Ritchie County, West Virginia. Gwyn is working her way to a double major in journalism and public relations. She spent her summer as a public relations intern at the Ritchie County Humane Society. When she wasn't saving the animals from alien explosions, you could find her taking photos, creating social media content, and planning and promoting events. Senior Rebekah Vaughan hails from the nearby star cluster of Prosperity, Pennsylvania. She is a communication major with a focus in electronic media and a minor in journalism. Over the summer, she interned at WTOV, a small market television station based out of Steubenville, Ohio. As per her presentation title, she spent the summer on TV, working to write and tell stories that impacted her audience. She found stories, conducted interviews, and constructed packages to broadcast over the intergalactic airwaves. Abigail Phillips hails from an old Earth town called South Fayette, Pennsylvania. While on Earth, she studied journalism at Waynesburg University. During her space travels, however, she internshipped at the Greene County Tourism Office. Lovely shit, if I do say so myself. They called her the intern. Wow, she was the intern. She was responsible for receiving intergalactic phone calls, showing visitors the information they needed, as well as enticing other humans to join the ship of Greene County. Spencer Frattare is a junior sports broadcasting major from the Cleveland, Ohio area, but don't hold that against him. This summer he interned with the Akron Rubber Ducks, where he worked many positions while attempting to save the galaxy. Turn paper over here, there's more on the back. Before we begin, please take this moment to make sure that your cell phones are, at the very least, on vibrate. Because honestly, the ringing could be distracting to those from distant galaxies, like Prosperity. Now, sit back, relax, and don't forget your town. Pause here for applause. And now your first presenter, Gwyn Napier.
Hello everyone. I wanted to say welcome and thank you for coming to today's presentations. I did my presentation on the Ritchie County Sorry about that. If you were wondering who let the dogs out, it was me. Every single morning at 8 o'clock, where I did my internship at the Ritchie County Humane Society. So why did I choose the Ritchie County Humane Society? My first reason is because I had seen the wonders that this profit did, or nonprofit did, to help the community. Whether it was taking animals in off the street, or housing animals for people in the community who may have had a house fire or some other reason that they couldn't. I also wanted a public relations experience. I am a double major, and I had done my journalism internship a prior summer. So this year I wanted to do a public relations internship. My third reason is because I wanted to stay close to home. I thought when looking for an internship that I wanted to move far away. But once I realized that this might be my last summer at home before getting my big girl job, I decided to stay close and spend time with my family. And my last reason is because I love animals. I've loved animals since I was a little girl, and I might like them a little bit more than people. So who are my supervisors? Instead of having just one or two supervisors, I had a whole group to guide me through my internship journey. These lovely group of ladies right here. On the top right is Michelle Stutler, and she was the Board of Directors Vice President. This was who I turned all my work into to later be posted on social media. In the top middle is Hannah DeMoss, and she was my dog supervisor. So anything that I did with dogs, she guided the way when letting me know which dogs were safe to handle and which were not. On the top left is Judy Watson, and she is the shelter manager. Sadly, I did not get to spend a lot of time with Judy because she was out in the field taking animals to the vet and rescuing animals off the street. In the bottom row is Natasha Smart and Christy Baker. They were my cat supervisors, so they did everything that Hannah did, but with cats. So what were my jobs? After I'd let the animals out at 8 o'clock in the morning, it was time to go up to the office and answer emails, messages, and phone calls from potential adopters. My main reason for this internship was updating the Humane Society's Facebook page. Even though they had a Facebook page, it wasn't anything special. And I wanted to make sure that when people saw their post on Facebook, they knew it was the Ritchie County Humane Society. That is why I stole the brand kit from WooCom 326 and made it my own. I also took lots of photos. And when taking photos of animals, I learned it was very difficult, and the treats always needed to be on hand. And in fact, I took a lot of treats home with me, which may have made my dog like me a little bit better. I would then use those photos to create content. I would then use the content I created to promote and help plan events. So why being at the Humane Society, I like to think about things that I created, and I got to put my name on them. And they still use these things to this day after I've left. One thing being the Pet of the Week, the second thing being the first annual Spectacular Pet Pageant, and the last being animal graphics. So what was the pet of the week, or what is it? The pet of the week is something I came up with because I noticed animals were there for a long time and weren't getting adopted, and I wanted to do something to showcase their personalities. So I went to my supervisors, Judy and Michelle, and asked them what animals had been there the longest so that I could take pictures of them. And then I had a cat edition and a dog edition. So every week there was a new cat and a new dog. I would then go take pictures of these animals. I would write personalized letters from the animal's point of view as if they could talk to the adopters themselves. I would then go home and create the graphic on Canva. The first annual Spooktacular Pet Pageant. This was an event that I created myself. I knew that I wanted to give back to the place that had given me so much this summer. And being the pageant girl I am, I decided, why not do a pageant? So this was a chance for the people of Ritchie County to bring their animals and enter them in costumes in a pet pageant to win prizes. When doing this, I also had to do steps to make my event run smoothly. One thing was donation letters. I wrote letters to the people of the businesses and stores of Ritchie County, asking them for things that would help my pageant run smoothly, whether it be toys, decorations, or even the venue. And then I had to create a judge's scorecard. Judges can't judge if they don't know what they're judging on, so this was an important step. And then I created an application. Once again, you can't join a pageant if there's no application. Questions that appeared on this application were why I think my human is crazy, or favorite toy. I also created graphics as you see in the middle of the screen. I created my own Facebook event page so that I could post these graphics and keep the people who are attending the pageant up to date on what is happening with it. Lastly, I created animal graphics. This was the biggest part of my internship, I feel, because to get these animals adopted, you had to show their personalities. I strongly believe that personalities were what helped get these animals out of here. As you can see, Bear says it's okay if male dogs play with pink toys too. Palmer is enjoying a day in the sun, and Brady is really excited for the 4th of July. So how did I make these graphics? The first thing I had to do was dress up the dogs. This was a hard step because you never knew which dogs liked to be dressed up and which preferred not to be. I would then take the pictures while holding my camera and saying, "Look at the treat, look at the treat." Once I took the photos, I would go home once again and I would edit them on Canva. Canva was a lifesaver to me this summer. So with every good internship, there are struggles. These are some of my struggles. My first struggle was learning my way around my camera. Even though it was my camera and I had taken some photography classes, I wasn't really comfortable with all the settings. And I didn't really know how to keep the hot breath and little smudge prints off the lens. My second was making time for my internship. I had worked a summer job since my freshman year of college. So that was a big thing, balancing my internship and my summer job. I felt that I was falling behind in my internship, and I had to ask my supervisors to leave the doors unlocked, and I would show up at 10 o'clock at night and take pictures of these animals, and then wake up in the morning and go to work. I did decide that it was best for me to quit my summer job and focus on my internship. And lastly is communication on when to post things. I struggled with one of my supervisors not really communicating to me. So I would do all this work, edit all these posts, write all these newsletters, send them to her, and I was never seeing them appear on Facebook or anything else. So what were my key takeaways? One is I would be very interested in a career in public relations. Before this internship, I always thought that I was going to go on the journalism route. But after having this internship, I would very much be interested in a career in public relations. My second reason is never stop pushing for what you want. If I would have just gave up and not talked to my supervisor about why I wasn't seeing my posts, I don't think that they would have ever got posted. And last is take a step outside your comfort zone. If you would have told me this time last year that I would be planning my very own event, I would have laughed in your face. But after doing it, even though there were hardships, The outcome was so rewarding. And there are plans for a second annual pet pageant, so fingers crossed. My actual takeaways. When I started this internship, actually, before I started, my mom told me, no more animals. I like to call myself a collector of animals. So, you can see these lovely gentlemen on the screen. They're King and Castle. And I had picked out King, but of course, Castle came with him because they were a bonded pair. But I wouldn't change anything for the world, and I love these little sweeties with my whole heart. So other tasks I had. Once my internship was done and I finished all my hours, I was still volunteering my time at the Humane Society. So what task was I doing after I was done with my public relations task? One was giving sick animals medicine and Capstar. The second was drawing blood for heartworm and Lyme disease tests. And last was cleaning kennels and mopping floors. But it was all worth it. Does anybody have any questions? Joel.
Yeah, so most of these internships, we have people when talking about their experiences with working with people, and you had a lot of experiences working with animals. Did that add a degree of fun or difficulty or both?
It definitely added both. Like I said before, it was hard to take pictures of the animals. That was difficult. But once you got those treats, it was simple once you got the hang of it. It did add fun too, because when I wasn't doing my job, like my work, when I had a break or my lunch, I would get to love on these animals, so that was really special.
Were you able to resolve that communication issue, and if so, how?
Yes, I was. So I was very flustered about it, as you can imagine. And I would go home and talk to my mom about it, and I'd say, why am I not seeing this? I worked so hard, where is my work? And she said, you're never going to get anything out of life if you don't resolve your own problems. So I went the next day and I sat down with my bosses and I said, I don't really appreciate not seeing my work. And after that, it was resolved. Joe.
Did you have a favorite animal that you worked with?
So actually, I didn't have a favorite. I don't care. But this is Jolene. And when Jolene came in, she was in an abuse case. So her abuser was a male, so she didn't like males. She was also very excited to see people and would jump on her kennel gate as they walked by, which could be viewed as scary in a mean dog. Obviously, she's not. And I did get to see her get adopted, which was really special. Thank you all. The next presenter will be Rebekah Vaughan.
Sorry guys, I'm actually getting a phone call. Hold on. Hello? This is Rebekah with News 9. This was a phrase that became extremely common when I spent a summer on TV as a news intern with WTOV News 9, a small market television station based out of Steubenville, Ohio. Now, the main station was based out of Steubenville, Ohio, which as you can see on the screen was over an hour drive away from my house in Prosperity, Pennsylvania. Lucky for me though, WTOV had two smaller offices that I could possibly work out of, one being in Wheeling, West Virginia, and one being in Belmont County, Ohio, located in St. Clairsville. Now I spent probably 99% of my summer working out of the Belmont Bureau, which was only 45 minutes away from my house in Prosperity, so a little bit closer. During my internship, my main supervisor was the one and only Don Sloan, but he was also the WTOV news director, so he did work out of that main station, which was still 45 minutes from my office in Belmont County. So I rarely got to see him in person, I think maybe 3 or 4 times. But there was no lack of communication between us because we did get to talk every day during our morning meetings, so he could give me kind of tips and tricks to improve my reporting and make sure I had stories lined up for the day. But don't worry, I was not alone in Belmont because I was joined alongside the Belmont County videographer, Craig Miner. And I could do a presentation on him alone, but for now we'll keep it simple. So he had just started back with WTOV at the beginning of January after coming from spending 19 years at a top 25 market in Nashville, Tennessee. So you can imagine he had some incredible experiences with him. And I credit the majority of what I learned this summer to what he was able to teach me from working with other reporters down in Nashville. Now, going into my internship at the beginning of May, I had no clue what to expect. There was no written out form that said exactly what I would be doing for my daily operations. So going into the internship, I had two very basic, very fundamental ideas of what I wanted to accomplish over my summer. For starters, I simply wanted to observe how a real television station operates. But I also wanted to learn and create content that would enhance my demo reel, so when I left the internship, I would have something to prove for myself, something to have that says, I have real world experience reporting, so I can provide that to possible employers after I graduate. Now, as an intern, there wasn't a whole lot I could do, to be honest. News interns are not allowed to appear on camera for the nightly news, so I was not able to put together my own stories. So I spent a lot of time shadowing other reporters at the station. Some of you may know Ed Diorio. He graduated here about 2 years ago. Well, he was actually the Belmont County reporter when I showed up at TOV. So I spent most of my time shadowing Ed, seeing how he interviewed his sources, seeing how he would build his packages, and tell these stories for the nightly news. I was allowed to practice my stand-ups though. And for those of you who may not know, a stand-up is when you watch a news package, the beginning and end of the story, where the reporter actually appears on camera. I was allowed to record those and practice them, but they never saw the light of day. I kept them for myself. They never made a nightly newscast because we weren't allowed to. But I was able to keep them, watch them, see how I needed to improve myself for my on-camera personality, so I looked more comfortable on camera. So those were kept for myself. But one thing I was allowed to do was I was allowed to interview sources and write up VOSOTs. Now, a VOSOT stands for voiceover sound on tape. So pretty much what I would do was I would conduct my interview, write up a script for the anchor on the desk to read, and then a clip of my interview would play as the sound on tape for the news. So although I was not appearing, my work was still being used and was still beneficial for the station. Now, this is actually an example of one of those VOSOTs that I would have written. So as you can see in the top corner, my name is attributed to the story. But if you hit play on that video on the TOV website, you don't see my face, you don't hear my voice, it's all the anchor on the desk reading. But I'm still attributed to completing the work. On the other side of the screen is the script that I would have written up myself in Belmont that the anchor on the desk would have read. So again, you don't know that I'm doing that work as an intern, but my name is still appearing on our website. And this is what I would have done for 40 hours a week down in Belmont County. And for our internship class, we needed 168 internship hours to complete the requirement. And if you do some quick math, that adds up to about 4 weeks in 1 day. So on our timeline, it takes me to June 6th. It was just still the beginning of summer. I didn't know what else I would be doing. Would I stay on with TOV just as an intern until August? I didn't even know if they would send me home, because my time was done there. But rather than sending me home, WTOV decided to hire me on as a full-time temporary reporter for the rest of the summer. And let me tell you, as a full-time reporter, my duties and responsibilities changed dramatically when compared to what I was doing as an intern. I was allowed to be on camera now. I could air on the nightly news. So I was in charge of finding full-length stories to build into packages that I could air to my audience. And I had to make sure they mattered to my audience in Belmont County. And sometimes I would be turning up to 3 of these stories a day. And when I did have a day that had 3 stories, it was a very busy day. I'd be working extremely hard, extremely fast to meet those deadlines so they could all air for the 5 o'clock news. But another thing was I had to become the face of Belmont County. So when I appeared on people's television screens, they had to recognize that a story from Belmont County was coming up. I needed them to recognize that I was their reporter for that area. And by the time the end of the summer came, I think I was accomplishing that, because I walked into a Starbucks one time for a cup of coffee, and the barista behind the counter said, "You're that girl from News 9. I know I recognize your face." So my audience was recognizing me. They knew who I was. Now, these were my basic responsibilities, things I would do every single day. but they weren't my only responsibilities. WooCom 326, anybody? Those of you who haven't taken this class yet or just don't know what this is our class where we pretty much tweet for credit. We learn how to use Twitter in a professional way, in a strategic way, so we can kind of hold a business page on Twitter. And it's one of those classes that I really honed in on over the summer because I was tweeting quite a bit. So I was in charge of if there was any stories that had a visual aspect or a little chunk nugget of information that I could get out there on Twitter quickly to our audience, I was in charge of doing that myself on my own TOV Twitter page. So I would cover things like local events that were happening, storm damage, and we covered a lot of storm damage over the summer from thunderstorms. We'd also cover breaking news. If something needed to get out there very quickly, this was one of the sources we had to be able to do that. But with breaking news comes something I struggled a little bit with over the summer. Live shots. If there is something happening now that needs to go out now, you're going live. I had no experience with live shots going into my internship. We don't practice that here because we don't have the capabilities to have a live shot just wherever we need them to. So I took a lot of advice from Craig on how to do this and how to do it appropriately so I could get all of the information I needed to in the time frame of potentially a minute. You have 1 minute to get all of your information out there. Another thing that I kind of struggled with was how I wanted to appear on camera. So my hair, my makeup, my wardrobe. Reporters are in charge of doing all of that themselves. And I still wanted to appear as myself on camera. I didn't want to be something different. So I wanted to be comfortable and I wanted to be able to still do my job. So minus the blazer, this is how I would dress for my summer, hair included. I was still able to do my job. I could change my shoes and put on rain boots if it was muddy outside. I just needed to be able to complete the job at hand without having to worry about my outfit. Another thing I kind of struggled with was MMJing. That's when the reporter goes out in the field all by themselves, films everything, and does everything alone. And for the majority of the summer, I had a videographer with me. So he would shoot all of the footage and he would edit everything on Avid. But there were, I think, 4 days where I was by myself. And I struggled with the equipment. And I didn't know how to use Avid to edit things. So there was quite a few times I had to make phone calls to other videographers so they could tell me what I needed to do to get those stories still submitted for the news. But overall, my summer internship taught me more things than I could have ever expected it to. I learned how to structure stories in a way that the story flowed really well in an understandable way for my audience, while still packaging everything together in a small nugget of information to air on the news. My interviewing skills went through the roof from before I started the internship. My interviews no longer felt like I was drilling the source with questions with a microphone. It became a conversation. And I was able to make those important connections with the public. I was working to bridge the gap between news reporter and community. When I was able to do that, I was able to see that pay off. Saying those last words at the end of my news packages, it just made it so much more special and so much more important for me.
Reporting in Martins Ferry for News 9.
Reporting in Belmont County for News 9.
Reporting in Steubenville for News 9. I'm Rebekah Vaughan.
Do we have any questions?
So you jumped in with both feet, and it looks like it really helped. Is there any kind of advice that you have for all of your fellow classmates?
Again, yeah, jump in with both. Like, don't sit back and just let them say, oh, you don't need to do anything. Get your hands dirty. Get in there as quickly as possible. You're going to prove yourself to your employer, and they're going to know that you're ready to take on harder work. So, yes, definitely get involved fast. Erin?
After your first time kind of experimenting and struggling with the editing equipment, did you take time outside of work to really try to figure out what it was going on?
Right, so at work we use Avid, which is something that a lot of news stations actually use, and it is an expensive software. And when you compare it to like Adobe Premiere Pro, what we use here, it's a little more in depth. It's kind of, the things are located in different places. But it wasn't something you could just take home because it's all stored on the work computers. But there was nothing stopping me from going on YouTube and trying to find out what I needed to do to just at least lay down video. Austin.
Having this experience working with News 9 and now graduating in May, what do you think, how much of a different perspective do you have now than you think you would have if you did not have this chance to run there?
Yeah, going into it at the beginning, I was nervous because, oh my gosh, I would be a reporter and I'd be on television. It's not about me. The stories are never about me. I'm there to tell the story and that's it. So before the internship, it really felt like this was, we're working here to be good ourselves. After this, I'm there to tell people stories, and I loved the connection I was able to make with our community. All right. Thank you, everybody. Our next presenter is Abigail Phillips.
So many of you might think that there's not a lot to do in Greene County. However, with my experience at Greene County Tourism, I would have to disagree. So today I'll be talking about where I've worked and some of my duties, as well as the highs and joys of my internship, the lows and what comes up and what's come down, and as well as what I've learned and some things that I've learned about myself. So where I worked. Greene County Tourism. So Greene County Tourism is the official tourism agency here in Greene County. It's right next to the courthouse. And it is ran and managed by Joanne Marshall. And it's located next to the courthouse. And we focused on making people want to come to Greene County and really help the economy. So Joanne Marshall. She's really a one-woman show. When I got there, I was expecting there to be maybe a few different people working there, except it's just her. It's literally just her. She runs the social media, she writes the blog posts, she calls people, she helps people. It was all her. So it was really easy to get assignments to do in some cases. And she clued me in on what working for the county was. So I answered the phone. I helped anybody who came into the office, and I also wrote a lot of blogs, and I did so much research on Greene County this summer. And as well as towards the end of it, I was able to do graphics. So, helping with anybody who came into the office. Usually someone was looking for a different office in the building, as the building that we're in has a whole bunch of different government buildings inside. So my usual answer was, I'm new here, I don't know, can you please ask, like, the security down the street, or down the hallway? Which usually was like, oh, okay, and they would leave. And a lot of people were also looking for my boss, as she is a very integral person to the county. So a lot of people would just go to her for things. A lot of people would also wonder about tourism-related things, which is where I was really utilized the most. So we had a lot of pamphlets. I would direct them to all the pamphlets that were for the specific thing they were asking for. As well, sometimes I'd even look, if I didn't know something, I would look it up right then and there in front of my computer with the person. I even helped with them with finding applications they needed for different events that happened in the county. Writing blog posts. So it's kind of hard to see up on the screen, but those are all the blog posts that I had to write this summer. There was a total of 9 of them, and there was 2 types of blogs that I had to write. I had to write lists and I had to write articles. Articles were more blog style blogs, where it was just telling a story and about a location or an event. And lists were kind of listing like, oh, here's the summer events for the summer that are really fun that you should go to. So my favorite list blog that I made was one about different things at the farmers market that was held. It was held on Wednesdays at 10. However, a lot of people would start setting up at 8 o'clock. And it made me really feel like a journalist, because I am a journalism major. It was very hard for me to find things that were more journalistic with my job, and this one was definitely more journalistic. I would ask different vendors exactly what they were selling, kind of their story and history about their their business, and I wrote an entire blog post about it. And I was very anxious, like when my boss told me to go out there and ask people questions, it made me really nervous, because usually here, while I did ask people in person, it was just in a more controlled space, whereas this one was, I was going out into the public and asking the questions in front of the people. But I got over it, and I was like, you know what, you're a journalist, you have to do this in the real world, get over yourself. So I did it, and it was actually a blast. I also got to do some other job responsibilities, take some pictures, and it was good. My favorite blog is the quarterly 90th anniversary. It's about a family who comes together every year, and it came from Reverend Quarterly. He had a lot of descendants, and his family was actually really massacred, and there's a lot of massacres that have happened in here in Greene County, which I learned, and it's probably why it's considered one of the most haunted counties in Pennsylvania. But this one was probably my favorite work that I ever produced. In fact, my boss, when I showed it to her, she was kind of shocked that it came from me, which I decided to keep from take as a compliment. But the different interesting things about the conflict between Indians or Native Americans and the settlers here in Greene County was very interesting to read about. Research. So I researched many different things. As you can see, I researched covered bridges, different types of social media research, Underground Railroad, and different wedding venues in Greene County. The main two I focused on were covered bridges and Underground Railroad. But this is social media research. I was just trying to look for how other tourism agencies were utilizing their social media and how we could, mirror that ourselves. And wedding venues, just to write another list essentially of different wedding venues here in Greene County. So when it came to the covered bridges, there were two types of documents that I had. I had the coherent version and the extremely not coherent version. This is the coherent version, and as you can see my little notes that I made of things that need to be improved. And let me tell you, finding information about most of these bridges felt like it was impossible. There's barely anything online about them, and even when I went to the library to read physical papers, the problem with these covered bridges is they were built and it was never documented, and it was before people started documenting when they were, so you didn't know who built them and stuff like that. So most of the information that I found was, oh, the Nannywood Bridge is named after this guy, or things like that. And also another problem is I'd find information about bridges, however, that bridge is on private property now, so it may or may not exist, and we can't promote people going onto private property, and potentially, you can't go on private property if you're not invited. And another thing that was hard, especially about the Nannywood Bridge, was that there was a lot of contradicting information. One source would say it was named after a veteran, another one would say it was named after a woman. So that was kind of hard to navigate. I remember talking to my boss about that one and be like, hey, I'm getting two different sources, and she's like, well, most people believe it came from this one, so do it this one instead of the other one. The Underground Railroad. Again, there was the coherent version of my document, and then there was the actual copy version of my research. I didn't realize that the Underground Railroad went through Greene County, and it actually made me look at different buildings here a lot differently. If you know the Messenger Building, which is right across from Greene County Courthouse, there's actually a tunnel underneath there, and that's where people would escape. So some design work that I did. This happened at the very end of my internship, and I was able to create different designs for the county. So the very first one that you see here is Waynesburg Borough sticker. I made a sticker for every municipality inside Greene County. I just chose Waynesburg because obviously. Also, this design here was not, at the very top, was not able to be used because there's too many colors inside of it. And then the same with this one here, it's not finished. I have to finish it first. And then we also have the squirrel one, which was actually used and produced, where the other intern who was working at Greene County Tourism collaborated with different businesses inside of Waynesburg, and this was going to be a prize to anybody who visited them all. So the highs of the job. I had a very flexible work schedule. I worked 3 days a week and mostly 8-hour shifts. There were a few days where it wasn't 8 hours. And I worked 2 days at my retail job as well. And there were a few times where I did have to call off for an emergency. So some of the highs were meeting new people. Like I mentioned before, I was able to visit the farmer's market, and I got to have a lot of long conversations. Usually from people who were looking for my boss, and sometimes she wasn't here that day. But I got to learn a lot about the different people in Greene County, and it really made me appreciate the people here. I got to learn something new, a lot of rich history here in Greene County that I didn't realize happened here. And that was a really good treat to see. Money, okay. One of my goals at the beginning of the summer was to have a paid internship. And luckily, Greene County Tourism paid me a nice chunk of money. So that was also a big high. Some of the lows. This is probably my lowest moment. I hit a mouse on the way to work, and that was horrible. I really sobbed the entire way. So I felt like there were sometimes there wasn't much for me to do. Based off of previous interns telling me what they did, I felt like I was going to have more. But instead, a lot of my responsibilities was just researching, and sometimes that just got really monotonous. There's also a little bit of a problem with some of my work being heavily edited to the point where I didn't recognize it as my own writing. As you can see at the far, is it your right or my left? I don't know. Okay. That is the one that is on the website, and I am attributed to it. However, this is the one that I have that was the edited version for me. And if you just take a quick read, they're two very different articles, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. Another low was my cat got really sick. So he had an upper respiratory infection, he wasn't eating, and he was even though he was fairly eager to. So I had to take him to the doctors a few times, and I had to pray for him to make sure he felt better. And then at the very end of my internship, I had to cut it short because my mom injured her knee, and I had to help her get around the house. So some things that I learned. Is tourism for me? Maybe if it was a bigger market, I could see it working out for me better, and I think it made me appreciate local journalism more. So I think that's something that would draw me in if I could take a more journalistic approach. Do I have the ability to do a desk job? I always told myself that I could never do a desk job. However, if I have a clear goal, I could definitely do a desk job. And I found if clear tasks, I can latch onto them and finish them. Are there any questions? Oh my.
So you said the local connection really made you appreciate more. Is there anything that you're going to pull from the history aspects in the Underground Railroad? Is there anything that you want to pull from there and bring it right into Williamsburg now, or is there anything that kind of sparked a new desire in you for some of that local history stuff?
I think, but I think it definitely made me realize there's a lot more that goes on in small towns. So I think if there was a way to really hone in and not just hard news, but kind of more local aspects of the actual history that happened in small towns, that could be nice.
In your in-depth experiences, do you believe that Greene County is haunted?
So apparently the tourism building is haunted. My boss has had creepy experiences where she's actually ran out of the building. There were a few times where I was in the building myself and I didn't really experience anything, even though sometimes maybe it kind of felt a little spooky, but I've never experienced anything, at least at tourism. All right, thank you. Spencer Frattare, sorry.
Spencer's up next.
Go!
I'm sorry.
All right, I just first wanted to thank all of you for showing up. I myself appreciate it, and the three ladies in front also appreciate it. We just appreciate you guys spending your time here with us today. So I did my internship with the AA affiliate of the Cleveland Guardians, the Akron Rubber Ducks, and I know some of you who have been here previously are wondering, wait a minute, it's baseball and not the Wild Things. I know. We're switching it up a little bit. Why the Ducks? I wanted a fun internship. I wanted something that would be different. You know, my mom mentioned a radio internship, something with a TV station. I wanted something different. So when I was looking for internships, I looked at the Rubber Ducks website and it was unfinished, but it also kind of showed that, you know, it looked fun, and I will admit the website is a little wacky. It's not finished, it's not really done well, but when I saw that, I kind of knew for some reason just inside me, I had that feeling that this is where I wanted to be. My second point is I didn't know what I wanted. I really did not. I mean, I love sports. It's one of my favorite things in the world, but I just didn't know what I really wanted to do. The third thing, I wanted something where I would get involved. I wanted to go to an internship, and I wanted to get jumped in right away. I didn't want to have to sit there for weeks on end and not do anything, because there are some internships around the world where you don't do much. This is one where I was able to get involved pretty quickly. So where are the Ducks located? They are located in Akron, Ohio, and this near Cleveland. So the team stadium was in the heart of Akron. So as you can see in the background, there's two buildings and behind the stadium. And on the right and left side, there are also two or more big buildings. So you really cannot get more middle than where the stadium is. And it's a bowl-like stadium, so the stadium is more in the ground, and all the seats rise up, and it is even lower than the buildings located in the background. So I had three goals with the Ducks. My first was to get hands-on experience. And I won't lie, my first day there, I did absolutely nothing. I sat on my phone a lot because I wasn't really told what to do. I just didn't do much. I sat in a room with a few other interns who had positions. When I had got there, I was a little worried because the first day, I really didn't get much direction. I didn't know what I was doing. But that would later change. My second is I want to make connections in the world of sports. My grandfather announced for the Pittsburgh Pirates for 33 years, and ever since I've known that, it's something that I want to do, and I have connections here through my friends and teachers here, but now I went into a professional sports organization, and I made connections with people who are now friends and will be lifelong friends. The third one is come away with new things. We learned so much here at Waynesburg with Lucin, whether it's the radio station, whether it's the TV station. Now going into a professional stance with a AA affiliate for a baseball team in the minor leagues, this just opened a whole new world of things, and I learned so much more than I already have here. So my bosses, on the right is Jack Haynes. He's the Creative Services Coordinator Director. And on the left is the funniest man I think I've ever met in my life. He's the PA announcer for the Rubber Ducks, and he's a ticket salesman, Ethan Graham. And you will never ever meet a more diehard Cleveland Browns fan than Ethan Graham. So my responsibilities, I was up in the press box every game. Every home game is a game that I was at and I worked, and I was always up in the press box. So there were two main things I did while working with the Akron Rubber Ducks. The first was working the stadium's audio board. It's consumed of playing a player's walk-up song, playing a goofy sound, if a player messed up, or even playing a good sound, like on an occasional good catch we would play the ESPN sound, notifying the player that they made a good catch. Another thing I did was work the video board out in right field. They have a huge electronic board that shows ads. You got the first energy on top of the board. What the video board did out in right field was show the player's picture, their stats, it showed the batting lineup, it showed who was pitching, what his ERA was of the pitcher, all those different little weird types of stats you would want to see, they were up there. And the last thing I did on occasion, I didn't do it very often, when I worked at the pitch speeds. We have a camera on top of our press box that gets the pitch speeds automatically and sends it directly to me. So all I have to do while sitting down is press a button on the iPad, and it automatically shoots up the video board out in right field. So what does a game day look like for me? So first I get to the stadium, and we had to park pretty far away, which thankfully is a summer internship. There was no cold days, there were a few rainy days. After entering, we would grab food. I will say a huge plus about this internship. We got fed pretty well. Thursday was pizza and wings, Friday was steak, Saturday was Chick-fil-A. I mean, it could not get any better on the food side of things, and I didn't know it was going to be like that going in, but I am definitely glad it was like that. So about an hour before first pitch we get in the position, because an hour before game time is when the gates would open up into the stadium. So if I was on the audio board, as soon as those gates open, I would start playing music to let everyone know, hey, in an hour, the game begins. Also, once the game starts, I gotta be ready to go. There is not much time to dilly-dally, be on your phone. Once the game starts, cannot lose focus. I mean, the positions up in the press box that I had to work were positions that I had to pay attention the entire game. The tourney. So most of us in here, or not most of us, some of us in here worked the Pony League World Series at the end of the summer. There was not much time in that. That was fun. The Pony Leagues was fun, but there, as the guys in here who worked it know, not much time to relax. The tournament held at Canal Park this year is similar to that. It was the Ohio State High School Baseball Tournament. We called it the tournament because we were so terrified. We hated these long days. We didn't want to dare say the ocean name. It's held at Canal Park every year, and we were so busy this year and last year that the last picture I could find was in 2020. You can see the picture. It says June 11th and 13th, 2020. That is because I was scrambling last night, texting my boss, hey, do you have any pictures from last year or from when I worked? None. We were so busy that there was no pictures able to be taken. Why was it so busy? It's a 3-day tournament where 4 games are played a day, so crew calls at 8. I gotta get up early. I know everyone hates getting up early, but I gotta get up early. The park is 45 minutes away from my house, so I get up at 7:15, I'm there by 8. The first game's at 10, and the second game's at 12, then 4 and 6, but as we all know in the world of baseball, it's a very, very long sport, and games never run on time. And like I said, there was not much time at all. I rarely had time to even go to the bathroom or check my phone when I text from my phone. So, struggles. I worked another job. I wouldn't say it's a struggle, but it definitely added on to travel and stuff like that. I worked for the Brunswick City Parks and Rec Department, and that's 45 minutes away from the Akron Rubber Duck Stadium. So I would wake up in the morning. You've got to wake up at like 6:30 for my job at the city. It's a 7 to 2:30 job, and then I've got to leave at 2:30, shower, and fly out to Akron because it was 45 minutes away. Now, a huge struggle. It was a struggle / roadblock is, if not everyone knows, there was a shooting over the summer in Akron, and it was right near the stadium. And at that time, there was a lot of chaos, a lot of outbreak. It just kind of, it was a dent in the summer. We had to be escorted by police after games to our cars because it was such a far walk, and there were so many riots going on at the time, and places were boarded up. It was nothing like I've ever seen before, and it was kind of interesting to try to like do games and work around this incident that happened over the summer. So my takeaways. The first, you may not get involved right away. Like I said, on my first day there, I did absolutely nothing. I will admit to you that I was on my phone 99% of the game. And it was something I was worried about and I knew I should fix, so I went home and I asked my mom, I complained to her, which I don't know why, because I was in the wrong, but I complained, I said, Mom, I did nothing today. I'm a little worried. She said and told me, you have to get involved, you have to jump in. So the next home game that we had, I got there first, I made sure I was there first, I got a great parking spot. I asked my boss, I said, hey, what can I do? Where can I start? I want to get my hands on everything I can right now. The second takeaway is internships provide connections. Like I mentioned earlier, I have so many connections through all you here already and the teachers here. And now I'm able to go into a AA affiliate team of the Guardians and the Akron Rubber Ducks. And I'm meeting people who have worked in Detroit, who have worked in Kansas, who have worked all around the world. And I get to become friends with them and get their numbers and their emails, and I get to make connections with them. Thirdly, I meet people who are now friends. Every guy that worked in the press box, we were the same people. There was about 20 new interns. I was the one lucky one that got placed in the press box. The press box at the Rubber Duck Stadium is a very high society. You have to be the best of the best to be in there. I didn't even think I was going to get in. I don't know how I did it, but it happened. Anyways, those guys who I got to work alongside with every day are now my friends and have even become my brothers. We still have a group chat today, We text about the Browns, we text about how we don't like the Steelers, and we want them to lose, all that great kind of stuff.
That's how you feel.
So some advice when looking into internships. I want to go for something you think you'll enjoy. Like I said, my mom was trying to help me find an internship, and I realized that I should look on my own, and I wanted to find things on my own because I had to be something that I wanted to do and something I wanted to enjoy. And when I found the Akron Rubber Ducks, I knew I would enjoy it. Second, get involved and push yourself to do more. Like I said, after that first day, I did pretty much everything I could to get involved, and as soon as that second day hit, I was there first, I was getting involved, I was asking what I could do. And third, take notes. They can help you out in the long run. I say this because we had to take notes for this class to help us write different things, but even if we didn't have to, I would have taken notes because it just really will help in the future. It will help maybe in classes here. Now I have notes on my phone about different positions, different jobs with the Rubber Ducks that if I ever need to look back on for something in the future, I'm able to. As you can see, we had a lot of fun in the press box on the left. We were all taking a picture, you know how those girls jump on the beach to try to avoid the water mid-picture? That was the idea for that one. It wasn't really working well. And Christmas in July, Santa came and visited the press box. We were able to get a good picture on the video. Thank you. Any more questions?
I have one. Because of the nature of baseball and the unpredictability of the length of games and rainouts or rain delays, how well did you think you dealt with the patience required to deal with those aspects of the game?
Yeah, so it took a lot. Like you mentioned perfectly, like I said earlier, there was a day where we had a game that started at 5 o'clock, and I didn't leave till 1 because it was a game that had to be played. It was a game that would decide a playoff game, and the patience was huge. We had multiple rain delays. We were there forever, but it really showed me that if I want to be in a professional sport like this and I want to work somewhere like this, that my patience has to be high. I have to be able to wait. Aaron?
Other than the connections, which is obviously a big and important part in our field, what do you think was the biggest takeaway you took from that internship that you can apply not only to your career as a student, but in the future afterwards?
I think I really just got to see, ever since I learned with any of the Pirates, sports has just been something I wanted to be involved with, and I had never really gotten to sit down and work with a professional team. We work with the Lucius Bowl teams here and do all that stuff. But after sitting down, I got to talk to players. I was able to, I met some of the actual Guardians players who had come down from rehab. I was able to talk with them, become friends with them. So getting to see that I was able to, get involved with the players, work in a professional state, really solidified what I want to do in the future. Yeah.
Any big takeaways from working these big time? You're at the big field, you're on AA. Anything that you want to bring from there to our recent productions that you and some of the others are involved in?
Well, at Woosten, we kill it here at Woosten, but to be honest, I wanted to work camera going into this. I never got to work camera for Rubber Ducks. They have set camera guys, but to be honest, everything they do there, we do here, and I would say almost a little better. That's how good we are here, but there are definitely small things like just having a mobile camera that we can use more often. We're starting to kind of play with that factor, but the main thing that I would say we take away from the Rubber Ducks and bring here is that their mobile camera was used a lot. Thank you very much.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Pros and cons of taking the internship between your sophomore and junior year as opposed to waiting another year?
It was huge as a pro to not get it out of the way. I don't want to sound disrespectful, but we have a lot of things senior year going on, and senior year is going to be huge for us, and every other senior will be a senior next year. So just getting it out the way in a good way, getting it over with, and now I can go over the next summer and I can work with the Rubber Ducks again. They already offered me to come back, and I can work with them again. The cons, there really isn't a con. I was glad to get it out the way, and now for next year I get to work with them. Just want to say thank you again. Next week we'll have Caleb Gallagher, Jesse Payne, and Tony Grillo. That'll be next week's presentation. So thank you.